If you love fishing like I do, that probably brought to mind at least one fishing trip. Even if you hate fishing, I'm sure you like a good story. In Module 1, you'll be doing just that, telling a story about something that happened to you, someone you know, or maybe even a pet. This type of essay is called a narrative because it tells about an incident. We are going to throw in a description of this narrative too to give it more pizzazz. That makes this first essay a narrative descriptive essay. You can write the essay on any event you wish. Remember that good story I told you about? Well, the example that I give is an incident that happened to my husband and I on one of our fishing trips to Eagle Lake in Northern California. By the way, the guy in the video, that was my son, who caught the rainbow trout in Eagle Lake. When writing a narrative descriptive essay, you want to include many details that will help the reader experience the event just the way you did. So let's get started. But before you continue, pause the presentation and print a copy of the example narrative or have it minimized on your screen so it is ready to read as you follow along while I'm telling the story. Narration is telling a story or telling about an event that happened. A novel is an example of a narration. Description is describing what is seen, heard, smelled, tasted, or touched. Good description allows the audience to experience exactly what the narrator experienced. A narrative descriptive essay can be written in first person, telling about something that you as the narrator experienced, or it can be written in third person, telling about something that happened to someone or something else. For example, you could tell about something that happened to a relative, a friend, or a pet. The thesis tells the reader exactly what you are going to talk about. There are different ways to write a thesis, but for this essay, you will write a thesis stating 3 things you will talk about in the essay. More about that later. The first step to writing any essay is to pre-write. First, pre-write to find a topic. Use the method of pre-writing that you prefer, whether it be free writing, brainstorming, or mapping. After you've decided an event you want to write about, pre-write again for details of the event. Look at what you have for the pre-write. Choose 3 parts of the event to list in the thesis statement. To do this, break up the event into 3 sections. These sections could be chronological, time, or of importance. It is up to you how you want to list them. Now that you have ideas for the topic and the details, write an outline for the narrative. The essay will be 5 paragraphs long. Use a Roman numeral for each paragraph. That means you will have 5 Roman numerals. You will need to have at least a capital A and a capital B under each Roman numeral. You can have more, but you can't have less. You may also want to put more detail under either A or B or both. If you decide to list more information under one or both of these points, keep in mind if you have a 1, you must have a 2. You can have more, but not less. You can also have points under one capital letter and not the other. For example, the point associated with capital A may require at least 2 points. Capital B may not require any more points. This means you would have 1 and 2 under point A and nothing under point B. This is perfectly acceptable. Just remember that the more information you put in the outline, the easier it will be to write your essay. The first paragraph from the essay will be represented by Roman numeral 1 in the outline. This is the introductory paragraph and will have your thesis and a hook to get your readers interested in your narration. Under that, write thesis with a colon after it and then state your thesis as it will appear in your essay. The second paragraph is called the first body paragraph. It is represented by a Roman numeral 2 in your outline. It gives information on the first point of the thesis. Paragraph 3 is called the second body paragraph. It is represented by the Roman numeral 3 in your outline. This paragraph gives information about the second point in your thesis. Paragraph 4 is the third body paragraph and is labeled Roman numeral 4 in your outline. This paragraph gives more information regarding the third point in your thesis. Now comes the conclusion, and it is represented by Roman numeral 5. In this paragraph, restate the thesis, then summarize what you have said. Now let's look at the actual outline. This outline gives basic information about a fishing trip that took place over Veterans Day weekend. Notice that the thesis is a complete sentence, but nothing else is a complete sentence. You don't need complete sentences in an outline like this. Look at the thesis now. Notice there are 3 points that are addressed in the essay. The first is an electric motor that died and came back to life. The second point is a gas motor that died and did not come back to life. The third point is a friend who could not find the couple when they were stranded in the middle of a lake. These 3 points will be the subjects of the 3 body paragraphs. Now look at subpoint B. This gives more information that will be put in the introductory paragraph. Notice that B has 3 points under it, but A does not. This is allowable. You can have points under one of the capital letters and not under the others. Roman numeral 2 refers to the second paragraph in a 5-paragraph essay. It talks about the first point of the thesis. In this case, it was an electric motor that died and came back to life. Again, notice that Roman numeral 2 has no complete sentences anywhere. You are not writing your essay in the outline. You are merely giving words and phrases to help you remember what you want to write about in the essay. Roman numeral 2 also has a capital A and a capital B as subpoints. Both capital A and capital B also have points under them. You don't have to have this much detail, but it does help. Roman numeral 3 has to do with the second thesis point, the gas motor that died and stayed dead. Like Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3 has capital A and B as subpoints, and 1 and 2 under that as subpoints. This is perfectly okay. Keep in mind that when you have a Roman numeral 1, you must have a Roman numeral 2. When you have a capital A, you must have a capital B. The same goes for the Arabic numbers 1 and 2. If you have a 1, you must have a 2. You can have more, but not less. We are almost done, so stay with me. Roman numeral 4 discusses the third point of the thesis, the fact that the author was stranded, she called a friend, and he didn't respond. Notice there are no complete sentences under Roman numeral 4 either, but there is a capital A and B as well as 2 points under each letter. Again, I emphasize that if you have a Roman numeral 1, you must have a Roman numeral 2. If you have a capital A, you must have a capital B. If you have a 1, you must have a 2. You can always have more of any of these, but you can't have less. I can't emphasize this enough. Too often, beginning writing students will not put in the second element, such as a 2 when they have a 1. But this is very important. The conclusion is Roman numeral 5 in a 5-paragraph essay. All that is required in this part of the outline is the word conclusion by Roman numeral 5. Restate the thesis by capital A. By capital B, put summarize or write tie up loose ends. Always remember not to say conclusion, finally, or in conclusion in the last paragraph of the essay, only in the outline. This would be repetitive or redundant. It is obvious that this is the conclusion because it is the last paragraph. The outline is now finished. It is time to write the essay. Many times students complain about writing an outline. They say it is hard. They don't know what to put in the outline. Yes, it is tough to write an outline, but the outline helps to keep the writer on topic. With an outline to go by, the writer doesn't go off on a tangent, but stays with the topic. If an outline is well written, the essay nearly writes itself. Now let's see what the finished narrative is like. You should have the printout of the essay in front of you so you can read along with me. My husband Jim and I go to Eagle Lake every year over the Veterans Day weekend. This is the last fishing trip of the year for friends and family, so everyone wants to catch not only the largest fish, but also the most fish of anyone else. Jim and I are no exception to this. We all have fun during this weekend fishing and swapping fish stories, but every year something happens to Jim and I that, although it makes for a great story, it is at least inconvenient, and at most it threatens our weekend of fishing. This particular weekend was no exception. On this Veterans Day weekend, we had an electric boat motor that died and came back to life, a gas boat motor that died and did not come back to life, and a friend who could not find us when we were stranded in the middle of the lake. The electric boat motor was the first victim of the weekend. As we were trolling the lake, enjoying the peace and quiet while attending to our favorite activity, the boat suddenly stopped moving, and the buzz of the electric motor ceased. When we looked at the back of the boat for answers, the electric motor was quite conspicuous by its absence. Jim rushed to the back of the boat and saw the electric motor hanging off the transom at the back of the boat. He pulled the motor in and tried to start it, but to no avail. The motor had been soaked by its dip in the lake and was dead. Luckily, after the motor dried out overnight, it started up just fine. So this was the motor that died and came back to life. The gas motor was not so lucky. The last day of fishing came, and we two anglers were returning from a hard day of fishing. The gas motor had been sluggish the entire trip, but Jim was able to keep it running long enough and well enough to get us around the lake. We couldn't go fast enough to get on plane, but we could go fast enough to get around the lake. This particular evening, we were crawling back to the dock when all of a sudden the boat stopped, and the sound of the motor was muffled. Upon turning around, we saw only the electric cables and not the gas motor. Jim quickly turned off the motor and crossed the deck of the boat in 2 strides. He grabbed the cables to prevent the weight of the motor from breaking the cables off of the battery and allowing the motor to fall into the lake. The metal plate that was welded to the motor and then attached to the transom had broken, which is why the motor was trying to find Davy Jones' locker in Eagle Lake. Now this was a 40 horsepower motor and was extremely large, especially when only one person was holding onto it with the electrical cables. Jim held onto the cables with both hands and braced himself by planting both feet firmly on what remained of the transom while I called our friend Matt on the walkie-talkie to come rescue us. The final part of this harrowing story was our friend not being able to find us stranded in the middle of Eagle Lake. Matt had already taken his boat out of the lake and was ready to go back to the house. No matter what I said, Matt was not in any hurry to launch his boat again that day. He thought this was all a big joke, until Eric, another friend, came on the channel and told Matt that this was a real emergency and that I was not joking. I told Matt where we were and he started out. It seemed an eternity before we saw Matt's boat, to Jim especially because he was holding a very heavy motor. I told Matt I could see him, but he was still at a distance from us. Matt went right by us. I told him to go back the other way, that he had passed us. He turned around and passed us again. This happened a couple more times. Finally, I was able to explain to him that he was a distance from us, but parallel to our position. He then realized his error and corrected for it. He and his nephew Zach eventually pulled up behind our stranded boat and helped Jim lift the gas motor back up into place. The crippled boat had to be towed back to shore. It was put on the trailer and taken to the house where we were staying. The gas motor was terminal, and the plate that attached to the transom had to be repaired. But at least this was the last day we had planned to fish. Besides, we had a story to tell about the motor that died and came back to life, the motor that died and never came back to life, and the friend who could not find us in our time of need.